Here's the deal: podcasts like ours don't survive on good intentions alone. Drop below, join our Patreon. We've got three different tiers. The content is great. We look forward to hearing from you. Left or right, why are we forced to choose a side? What if the real revolution is starting in the middle? Tune in for more. Finding the middle, why it's the boldest stand today. Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe for the Middle Ground Mike. And, nuance isn't just noise. We're talking about something that doesn't just define the show, but the future of healthy discourse, finding a middle area, finding common ground. A couple of my guests recently have even said this could be starting to become a movement to a point. It's not something that I expected, but hey, I'm not opposed to it. Let's make it more of a common thing. We can't do that without folks like you. We live in a culture of echo chambers. Algorithms feed us what we want to hear. The headlines are designed to get you going. And social media just rewards people for being outraged and sometimes just flat out jerks to each other for petty reasons, right? And it's not just exhausting. We all get tired of it, and it's dangerous to the fabric of our society. Every issue splits us in two. It's red versus blue, woke versus traditional, cancel versus defend, safety versus freedom. And, and if you're not loud, you're being accused of being part of the problem. But the real truth is, the real danger is not in taking a side, it's refusing to listen. That is where that is the biggest challenge. We've got to do a better job about it, right? The extremists are loud, no matter if you're left or right. It goes back to the old adage or phrase, whatever you want to say. It's saying, squeak wheel gets the grease. We have to do better. But the middle is about building bridges. We're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to find ways to where we can find a common area, right? We're not going to agree on everything. Sometimes somebody's going to lose. Sometimes everybody's going to win. It's just kind of how it goes, right? But let's be clear. It doesn't mean that the middle ground is neutral. It's not saying that I don't care. It means just refusing to dehumanize the other side, to just say because you're not me that you're evil. It means holding ideas in your head and saying, more than one, saying, or even if it's two, saying both these can be true. That's not weakness. That's intellectual strength. Your mind being strong, being able to handle things. And it's not saying that people that are on extreme side either can't, right? It's a different way of thinking. And I think it's a lot more of what America has. Hey, everybody, it's Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Check out our Patreon right now. We've got a special 3 months for a total of $3 and then $1.50 a month after that, plus options for other great stuff. I think about it. Everybody you know out in public, even if they're opposite political parties, most of the time they're pretty good people, pretty decent people. So think about that when you're online and how you're interacting with people. In the middle ground, we believe that there's a center where conversations can happen. Where we try to find real solutions, or at least a framework of a solution. We're not going to avoid hard things, hard issues. We're going to face them with curiosity instead of fear, rhetoric. We're not going to endorse those things. We're going to try to find balance. It's where bold ideas can meet a practical outcome. I can hear you even if I don't agree with you. And that kind of dialogue in today's world, it's revolutionary. To me it is anyways. So how do you live in the middle, right? Just kind of give a little bit more about the show. It's listening to understand, not listening to reply. Like a lot of times, when we're talking to a guest, they'll say, ABC. And I'll be like, yeah, while we're touching on that, that's what this is about, right? Because trying to expand on the ideas, expand on the discourse. Some of my interviews are so natural flowing that, in reality, we could go for 3 or 4 hours. But obviously, that's not realistic in today's world, right? We know who's got that kind of time. It's asking questions that makes us reflect, not just react. We don't want to surround ourselves with an echo chamber. We want to surround ourselves with people who are going to challenge our ideas without being mean. Mean's not the right word. Without being rude or jerkish about it, right? We don't need somebody to just cheer us on and tell us, woo, woo, you're a good thing. No, we need honest feedback. We got to be okay with something being complex. It's not a flaw. It's life. Just like life isn't black and white. There's a whole lot of gray. There's a whole lot of times when something is wrong and right at the exact same time. And it is very hard to, I want to say comprehend it, but make sense of it. Maybe that's the best way to put it, but Just being in the middle isn't being silent. It's just we're not screaming at you because you're not like us. We will scream if we have to, but it's not a point that we try to make. We're doing the quiet work of trying to heal the toxicity that has, gotten into everything. We got to trade talking points for talking points that meet facts, right? You can expand on that fact to how it makes you think, but that doesn't make how you think a fact. You can expand on it, but it doesn't make it. And I really hope if, that today's episode, if you want to call it, really kind of get you going, if it sparks something in you, good, let it, let's take a moment to think about a conversation you've avoided because you fear it would explode, because you don't want to fight with the person, because you don't want a disagreement, or you don't want to possibly even lose a friendship or relationship with someone. What if instead you led with curiosity instead of attacking? Join us at themiddlegroundmike.com. Subscribe, follow for more episodes. Don't forget to join our Patreon. We're running a special right now. If you join for 3 months, you get it for $3. After that, it'll be, I believe, $1.50 a month. And you're going to get great content. There's going to be exclusive, second part interviews. There are going to be exclusive updates. There's going to be access to discounted merchandise, just tons of stuff, or if that's just not your cup of tea, feel free to donate to us on PayPal. The links are going to be below. It really helps us keep going. It helps fund everything, right? Because not everything is free in life. And, we depend on good people like you to keep us afloat, and keep this movement growing. Encourage, if you know someone that is political, that would be a good discourse, encourage them to reach out to us. We're always looking for good conversations. Always. It never ends. We really, really love good, solid conversation. We've had liberals on here. We've had right-wing people on here, Republicans, Democrats, whatever you want to call it. We've had people talking about leadership. We've talked about men's mental health. We've talked about mental health in general. We've really talked about changing society. We have a lot to offer everybody, so we got to really explore what it means to stand in the middle. That exploration may never end, but we have to look. And because if we don't look, we're selling ourselves short, we're selling society short, and we're selling everyone around us short. So let's do better. Let's find peace and let's find common ground. I hope everyone has a good day.